The smell hit me first. Something was wrong in my own house, and I couldn't put my finger on what it was. Maybe it was the cologne, expensive, heavy, definitely not mine. Or maybe it was the fact that Lauren's car wasn't the only one in our driveway when I pulled up at 7 in the morning. I'd been on the road for 2 weeks, hauling freight from Maine to Texas and back. The job was supposed to take 3 weeks, but I'd pushed hard, driven extra hours, and finished early. All I wanted was to surprise my wife, maybe take her out for breakfast before she had to get to work. The front door was unlocked, which wasn't unusual. Lauren always said our neighborhood was safe enough. I dragged my duffel bag inside and called out, "Honey, I'm home early." No answer. The living room looked normal enough, but there were 2 wine glasses on the coffee table. Both had lipstick marks. That was odd. Lauren rarely drank wine, and when she did, she was careful about her makeup. I heard laughter from upstairs. Lauren's laugh, but there was another voice too. A man's voice. Deep, familiar, and way too comfortable in my house. My stomach dropped, but my feet kept moving. Each step up the stairs felt like walking through quicksand. The bedroom door was slightly open, and I could hear them talking in low voices. "He won't be back until next week," Lauren was saying. "Greg, you worry too much." Greg, my boss, Gregory Holbrook, the man who'd been sending me on longer and longer trips over the past 6 months, the man who'd insisted I take this particular route, even though it meant being away from home for weeks at a time. I pushed the door open. There they were, my wife of 8 years and my boss of 3, tangled up in my bed like they owned the place. Greg saw me first, and instead of looking shocked or embarrassed, he actually smiled. Not a guilty smile or an apologetic one, a satisfied, almost proud smile. "Well, well," he said, not even bothering to cover himself. "Didn't expect you back so soon, Eli." Lauren's face went white. She grabbed the sheet and pulled it up to her chin, her eyes wide with panic. "Eli, I can explain. This isn't what it looks like." I stood there for a moment, taking it all in. The expensive suit draped over my bedroom chair, the champagne bottle on my nightstand, the way Greg was looking at me like he'd just won some kind of contest. "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone, "I think it's exactly what it looks like." I took a photo before either of them could react. The flash lit up their guilty faces, and Lauren let out a small scream. "Eli, don't," she pleaded. "You don't understand. We were just talking, and then—" But I was already typing. I found Greg's wife's number in my contacts. We'd exchanged information at the company Christmas party last year and sent her the photo with a simple message. "Found your husband. Please come pick him up." Greg's smug expression finally cracked. "You son of a—" "I wouldn't finish that sentence if I were you," I said calmly. "You're in my house, in my bed, with my wife. I'd say I'm being pretty reasonable here." Lauren was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "Eli, please, let me explain. This just happened. It doesn't mean anything." I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I'd married, the woman I'd worked 60-hour weeks to provide for, the woman who'd been pushing me to take longer trips so she could have more time with her lover. "How long?" I asked. "What? How long has this been going on?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. Greg, meanwhile, was getting dressed with the casual air of a man who'd done this many times before. "Let me guess," I continued. 6 months? Right around the time you started suggesting I take those longer routes? Right around the time Greg here started being so generous with the overtime opportunities?" Greg straightened his tie and had the audacity to look me in the eye. "Business is business, Eli, and this? Well, this is just personal." "Personal," I repeated. "Right." My phone buzzed. A text from Greg's wife. "On my way. Don't let him leave." I held up the phone so Greg could see the message. His face went pale. "Now," I said, "I suggest you both get dressed and figure out what you're going to tell Mrs. Holbrook when she gets here, because I'm guessing she's going to have some questions." Lauren was sobbing now, reaching for me. "Eli, please, I love you. This was a mistake." "The only mistake," I said, stepping back from her grasping hands, "was me not seeing this sooner." I walked out of the bedroom and down to the kitchen, where I made myself a cup of coffee and waited. Through the window, I could see Greg's BMW in my driveway, gleaming in the morning sun. 20 minutes later, a silver Mercedes pulled up behind it, and a very angry-looking woman got out. Mrs. Holbrook, Patricia, I remembered her name now, marched up to my front door like a woman on a mission. She was impeccably dressed even at 7:30 in the morning, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her face set in stone. I opened the door before she could knock. "Mrs. Holbrook," I said, "I'm sorry you had to see that photo." "Where is he?" she asked, her voice deadly calm. "Upstairs, getting dressed. Would you like some coffee while you wait? She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. That would be nice. Thank you. We sat in my kitchen in uncomfortable silence while the sounds of frantic movement came from upstairs. Lauren was crying loudly now, and I could hear Greg's voice, low and urgent, trying to calm her down. How long have you known? Patricia asked finally. I just found out 20 minutes ago, I said. But looking back, I should have figured it out months ago. All those long trips, all those last-minute assignments. She nodded grimly. He's been coming home late, taking mysterious phone calls. I hired a private investigator last month. That surprised me. You already knew? I suspected, but I needed proof before I could file for divorce. She sipped her coffee and looked at me with something like sympathy. I'm sorry about your wife. Yeah, well, I guess we both got our proof today. Greg appeared in the kitchen doorway, fully dressed but disheveled. He looked between his wife and me, clearly trying to figure out what we'd been discussing. Patricia, he said carefully, I can explain. Can you? She asked, not looking at him. Can you explain why you've been sleeping with your employee's wife? Can you explain why you've been using company resources to send him away so you could have your little affair? It's not like that? It's exactly like that. She stood up and faced him. I've been documenting everything, Gregory. The late nights, the unexplained charges on your credit card, the hotel receipts I found in your jacket pocket. Lauren appeared behind Greg, her eyes red and puffy. She'd thrown on a robe, but still looked like she'd been hit by a truck. Eli, she said, her voice shaking, can we please talk privately? I don't think there's anything left to say, I replied. Please, I can explain everything. This isn't what you think? Patricia let out a harsh laugh. Isn't what he thinks? Honey, I've got photos of you two going into the Marriott downtown. I've got credit card receipts for romantic dinners. I've got phone records showing hundreds of calls between you and my husband. Lauren's face crumpled. You've been watching us? I've been watching him, Patricia corrected. You were just collateral damage. Greg tried to take control of the situation. Look, everyone needs to calm down. We're all adults here. These things happen. These things happen. I stood up slowly. You've been systematically destroying my marriage and using your position as my boss to cover it up, and you think these things happen is an appropriate response? I never forced anyone to do anything, Greg said defensively. Lauren made her own choices. Lauren whirled on him. You said you loved me. You said you were going to leave Patricia. I never said that. You did. You said, I said a lot of things. Greg's mask was slipping now, revealing the cold calculation underneath. But I never promised you anything. The look on Lauren's face was heartbreaking if I'd still had a heart to break for her. She was realizing in real time that she'd thrown away our marriage for a man who saw her as nothing more than a convenient distraction. Patricia gathered her purse and stood up. Gregory, I'll be filing for divorce on Monday. My lawyer will be in touch about the division of assets. I suggest you find somewhere else to stay tonight. Patricia, wait. But she was already walking toward the door. She paused and turned back to me. Thank you for the coffee, Eli, and for the photo. My lawyer will be very interested in it. After she left, the three of us stood in awkward silence. Greg looked like he was trying to figure out his next move, while Lauren just looked lost. Well, Greg said finally, I guess I should be getting to the office. Actually, I said, I don't think that's such a good idea. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. I forwarded that photo to a few other people while you were getting dressed, your boss, for instance, and HR, and, well, pretty much everyone in your contact list. Greg's face went white. You didn't. I did. I figured if you were so proud of your accomplishment, you wouldn't mind sharing it with everyone. He lunged for my phone, but I stepped back easily. Too late, Greg. It's already sent. His phone started buzzing with incoming calls and messages. He looked at the screen and his face went from white to green. You've ruined everything, he said. No, I replied. I just made sure everyone knew what kind of man you really are. Lauren was staring at both of us like we were speaking a foreign language. What's happening? What did you do? I did what I should have done the moment I walked in on you, I said. I made sure there would be consequences. Greg was already backing toward the door, his phone still buzzing incessantly. This isn't over, Eli. Yes, it is, I said. It's very much over. After he left, Lauren and I stood alone in the kitchen. She was crying again, but quietly this time. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know you are, I said, but sorry doesn't fix this. Can't we try? Can't we go to counseling or something? I looked at her, really looked at her, and tried to find some trace of the woman I'd fallen in love with. But all I saw was a stranger who'd been lying to me for months. Pack your things, Lauren. I want you out by tonight. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know. Maybe Greg has some ideas. She flinched like I'd slapped her. He's not going to help me. You heard him. That's not my problem anymore. My phone rang. It was my friend Mike from work. Dude, he said without preamble, please tell me that photo isn't real. It's real, I said. Holy shit. Greg's been calling everyone, trying to do damage control. He's claiming you doctored the photo. Did you look at it closely? Yeah, man. It's definitely real. You can see the birthmark on his shoulder that he showed off at the company picnic last year. I'd forgotten about that. Greg had gotten drunk at the picnic and insisted on showing everyone his distinctive birthmark while he was swimming. It was shaped like Texas, he'd said, and he was proud of it. What's the word around the office? I asked. Chaos. HR is in full panic mode. Greg's boss is furious, and everyone's talking about how this explains all those long trips you've been taking. Yeah, it explains a lot. Listen, man, I'm sorry. I know you and Lauren seemed happy. We seemed a lot of things, I said, but happy wasn't one of them, apparently. After I hung up, Lauren tried one more time. Eli, please. I made a mistake, but I love you. I've always loved you. No, I said. You loved the idea of me. You loved having a husband who worked hard and didn't ask questions. But you didn't love me enough to stay faithful. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, and now everyone knows it. She left that afternoon with 2 suitcases and her dignity in tatters. I watched from the window as she loaded her car, her movements jerky and desperate. My phone had been ringing all day with calls from friends, coworkers, and even some people I barely knew. The photo had spread beyond my intended recipients, shared and forwarded until it seemed like half the town had seen it. Greg's career was over. Patricia would take him for everything in the divorce. And Lauren, well, Lauren would have to figure out what came next. As for me, I sat in my empty house and tried to figure out how I felt about it all. Mostly, I felt tired. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, lawyers, and awkward conversations. Greg had been suspended pending an investigation into his conduct, and the company was scrambling to figure out how to handle the situation. I'd taken a few personal days to sort things out, but by Thursday, I knew I had to face the music at work. The office was buzzing with gossip when I walked in, and conversation stopped mid-sentence as people noticed me. Mike was waiting by my desk with a cup of coffee and a sympathetic expression. How you holding up? He asked. I've been better, I said, but I've also been worse. The whole place has been talking about nothing else. Greg's cleaned out his office, and there are rumors that he's been doing this kind of thing for years. That got my attention. What do you mean? Sarah in accounting says she heard from someone in HR that there have been complaints before. Nothing formal, but whispers about Greg getting too friendly with female employees. And they didn't do anything about it? Mike shrugged. You know how it is? He was bringing in a lot of business, and the complaints were all he said, she said stuff. But this is pretty hard to deny. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. L. I showed Mike the message. Lauren? Probably. She's been calling everyone we know, trying to find someone who'll listen to her side of the story. And? Most people are avoiding her calls. Word gets around fast in a town this size. I spent the morning catching up on work and trying to ignore the stares and whispered conversations. Around lunchtime, my supervisor, Janet, called me into her office. Eli, she said, closing the door behind me. I wanted to check in with you about everything that's happened. I'm fine, I said automatically. Are you? Because this situation has put the company in a difficult position, and we want to make sure we handle it appropriately. I studied her face, trying to read between the lines. Am I in trouble? No, not at all. If anything, you're the victim here. But we need to make sure there are no conflicts of interest going forward. What kind of conflicts? Well, Lauren works in HR. Or worked, I should say. She submitted her resignation this morning. That surprised me. She quit? Effective immediately. I think she realized her position here was untenable after everything that's come to light. I nodded. It made sense. Lauren couldn't very well continue working in HR after having an affair with a supervisor. The liability issues alone would be a nightmare. What about Greg? I asked. He's been terminated. The investigation found evidence of misuse of company resources and inappropriate conduct with subordinates, plural. So there were others? Janet nodded grimly. We're still sorting through it all, but it appears Greg has been using his position to pursue personal relationships for quite some time. Your situation was just the most documented. I left Janet's office feeling oddly vindicated. It wasn't just about Lauren and me. Greg had been a predator, using his power to manipulate and control people. My phone rang as I was walking back to my desk. Unknown number again. Hello? Eli, it's me. Lauren's voice was shaky and desperate. Please don't hang up. I almost did, but something in her tone stopped me. What do you want, Lauren? I need to see you. There are things you don't understand, things I need to explain. I think I understand plenty. Please, just give me 5 minutes. I'm at the coffee shop on Main Street. I looked around the office, where people were still stealing glances at me and whispering. Maybe it would be better to have this conversation away from prying eyes. 5 minutes, I said. That's it? The coffee shop was nearly empty when I arrived. Lauren was sitting in a corner booth, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her usually perfect hair was limp and unwashed, and she'd lost weight in the few days since I'd kicked her out. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down across from her. You said 5 minutes. Start talking. She took a shaky breath. I know how this looks, but it wasn't what you think. Greg, he manipulated me. He made me think you didn't love me anymore. How did he do that? He said you'd been complaining about me at work, that you told him our marriage was falling apart, and that you were thinking about leaving me. I stared at her. And you believed him? He was convincing. He said you'd asked for those long trips to get away from me. He said you'd been talking about divorce. Lauren, I never said any of those things. I've never talked about our marriage with Greg or anyone else at work. I know that now, she said, tears starting to fall. But at the time, it made sense. You'd been so distant, working so much. I was working so much because Greg kept giving me longer and longer assignments that kept me away from home so he could sleep with my wife. She flinched. I didn't know that. I thought you wanted to be away. So you decided to have an affair? It wasn't supposed to be an affair. At first, we were just talking. He was being so understanding, so supportive. He said he knew what it was like to be in an unhappy marriage. His marriage seemed pretty happy to me. He said it wasn't. He said Patricia was cold and controlling and that they'd been living like strangers for years. I shook my head. Lauren, do you hear yourself? You're describing a textbook manipulation. He told you exactly what you wanted to hear. I realize that now, she whispered. But at the time, it felt real. He made me feel wanted and appreciated in a way I hadn't felt in months. Because I was never home. Because he was sending me away. I know that now, but I didn't know it then. We sat in silence for a moment. Lauren wiped her eyes with a napkin and tried to compose herself. I've lost everything, she said finally. My job, my marriage, my friends. Everyone in town is talking about me. What did you expect would happen? I don't know. I wasn't thinking clearly. Greg said we'd figure it out, that everything would work out. And now? Now he won't even take my calls. His phone goes straight to voicemail, and when I went to his apartment, he wouldn't answer the door. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I'm staying at a motel on Route 9, she continued. I can't afford anything else. My credit cards are maxed out, and I don't have any savings. That's not my problem anymore. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to make this right. I looked at her across the table. This woman who'd shared my bed for 8 years, who'd promised to love and honor me, who'd thrown it all away for a few months of excitement with my boss. There's nothing to make right, Lauren. We're done. Don't say that. We can go to counseling. We can work through this. No, we can't, because every time I look at you, I'm going to see him. Every time you're late coming home, I'm going to wonder who you're with. Every time my phone rings, I'm going to think it's someone calling to tell me they saw you with another man. It would be different. I would be different. Maybe you would, but I wouldn't, and that's not fair to either of us. She broke down completely then, sobbing into her hands. The few other customers in the coffee shop were staring, and I felt a familiar urge to comfort her, to make everything okay. But I didn't, because some things can't be fixed with a hug and an apology. I have to go, I said, standing up. Eli, please. Goodbye, Lauren. I walked out of the coffee shop and didn't look back. My phone buzzed with text messages from her as I drove home, but I deleted them without reading them. That evening, I sat in my empty house and tried to figure out what came next. The divorce would be straightforward. Lauren had no grounds to contest it, and we didn't have kids or significant shared assets to fight over. My job was secure, maybe even better than before. With Greg gone, there was talk of promoting me to his position. The irony wasn't lost on me, but the house felt too big now, too quiet. Every room held memories of a life that no longer existed. My phone rang. Mike's name appeared on the screen. Hey, I answered. Hey yourself, how'd it go with Lauren? About how you'd expect. She's sorry, she was manipulated, she wants another chance. And nothing. It's over. Good. I mean, I'm sorry it had to end this way, but she made her choice. Yeah, she did. Listen, some of us are going to Murphy's for drinks tonight. You should come. I don't know, man. I'm not really in a social mood. That's exactly why you should come. Sitting alone in that house isn't going to help anything. He was right, of course. I'd been wallowing for days, and it wasn't accomplishing anything except making me more miserable. Okay, I said. I'll be there in an hour. Murphy's was the kind of bar where everyone knew everyone, and news traveled fast. When I walked in, several people nodded sympathetically or patted me on the shoulder. Word of my situation had definitely made the rounds. Mike was at the bar with 3 other guys from work. They made room for me and ordered another round. To new beginnings, Mike said, raising his beer. To new beginnings, I echoed. And for the first time in days, I almost meant it. 2 weeks after the coffee shop meeting with Lauren, I was starting to find my rhythm again. Work was busy. I'd been promoted to Greg's old position, which came with a significant raise and a lot more responsibility. The irony of benefiting from my wife's affair wasn't lost on me, but I tried not to think about it too much. I was reviewing shipping schedules when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Patricia Holbrook's name. Mrs. Holbrook, I answered. How can I help you? Hello, Eli. I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from the company directory. Not at all. How are you doing? Better than expected, actually. I wanted to thank you. Thank me? For the photo. For exposing Gregory for what he really is. My lawyer says it's made the divorce proceedings much simpler. I wasn't sure how to respond to that. I'm sorry you had to go through all this. Don't be. I should have left him years ago. This just gave me the push I needed. She paused. I was wondering if you might have time for lunch this week. There are some things about Gregory that I think you should know. What kind of things? Things that might help you understand why this happened, and things that might help you protect yourself going forward. We arranged to meet at a restaurant across town, somewhere we were unlikely to run into anyone we knew. Patricia was already there when I arrived, looking polished and professional in a navy suit. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. I know this is awkward. A little, I admitted. But I'm curious about what you wanted to tell me. She opened her purse and pulled out a manila folder. Gregory has done this before, multiple times. Mike mentioned there were rumors at work. It's more than rumors. I've been documenting his affairs for 3 years. She opened the folder and showed me photographs, credit card statements, and what looked like private investigator reports. 3 years? At least, probably longer, but that's when I started paying attention. She pointed to one of the photographs. This was his secretary at his previous job, and this one was a client's wife. I studied the photos. Greg with different women in restaurants, hotels, even what looked like my own neighborhood. He has a pattern, Patricia continued. He targets women who are vulnerable, unhappy in their marriages, insecure about their relationships, financially dependent on their husbands. He makes them feel special, tells them what they want to hear, and then uses them until he gets bored. And you stayed with him knowing this? Patricia's smile was bitter. I stayed because I was building a case. Gregory is very wealthy, Eli. He comes from money, and he's made quite a bit more through his business dealings. If I'd left without proof of his infidelity, I would have gotten a fraction of what I deserved. And now? Now I have enough evidence to take him for everything. The prenup becomes void in cases of adultery, and I have documentation of dozens of affairs. She showed me more papers, hotel receipts, restaurant bills, even what looked like receipts for jewelry. He spent thousands of dollars on your wife, she said matter-of-factly. Dinners, gifts, that necklace she was wearing in the photo you took. I remembered the necklace, a delicate gold chain with a small diamond pendant. Lauren had said it was a gift from her sister. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Because I want you to understand that what happened to you wasn't personal. You weren't targeted because there was something wrong with your marriage or because Lauren was particularly unhappy. You were targeted because Gregory saw an opportunity. An opportunity for what? Control, power. Gregory gets off on the manipulation as much as the sex. He likes knowing he can take something that belongs to someone else. I felt sick. So Lauren was just, what, a game to him? Exactly. And when you caught them, when you exposed him, you took away his power. That's why he's so angry. He's angry. Patricia nodded. He's been calling me, leaving voicemails, trying to convince me that you set him up somehow. He can't accept that he was simply careless. Set him up how? He thinks you knew about the affair and planned to catch them. He thinks the early return from your trip was deliberate. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. If I'd known, I would have handled it very differently. I know that, but Gregory's ego can't accept that he was outmaneuvered by someone he considers beneath him. Beneath him? Gregory looks down on everyone, Eli. He thinks his money and his family name make him superior. The fact that a truck driver, his words, not mine, managed to destroy his life is eating him alive. We ordered lunch, but I found I didn't have much appetite. The scope of Greg's manipulation was staggering, and I was beginning to understand that Lauren and I were just the latest casualties in a long string of destroyed relationships. "What's he doing now?" I asked. "Hiding, mostly. He's staying at his brother's house in Portland, trying to figure out how to salvage his reputation, but it's not going well. Word has gotten around in his social circles." "Good. I thought you'd feel that way." Patricia smiled, and for the first time it seemed genuine. "I have a proposition for you." "What kind of proposition?" "Gregory is going to try to get revenge on you. It's how his mind works. He can't accept responsibility for his actions, so he'll find a way to blame you for everything that's happened." "What can he do? He doesn't have a job, his wife is divorcing him, and his reputation is shot. He still has money, and he still has connections. He could make your life difficult if he wanted to." "So what are you suggesting?" Patricia leaned forward. "I'm suggesting we make sure he doesn't get the chance. I'm suggesting we finish what you started when you took that photo." "What do you mean?" "I mean we make sure Gregory Holbrook never has the power to hurt anyone ever again." I studied her face, trying to figure out if she was serious. "What did you have in mind?" "There are things about Gregory's business dealings that would interest certain people. Tax issues, regulatory violations, some questionable partnerships. Nothing that would put him in prison, but enough to make sure he never works in this industry again." "You want to destroy his career completely?" "I want to make sure he can't do to other people what he did to us, and I want to make sure he doesn't have the resources to come after you." I thought about it. Part of me was tempted. Greg had systematically destroyed my marriage and manipulated my wife for his own entertainment. He deserved whatever consequences came his way, but another part of me was tired of the whole thing. I just wanted to move on with my life. "I appreciate the offer," I said finally, "but I think I'll pass. Greg's already lost everything that matters. His job, his marriage, his reputation. That's enough for me." Patricia looked disappointed, but not surprised. "I understand. You're a better person than I am." "I don't know about that. I just don't want to spend any more of my life thinking about Gregory Holbrook." She nodded and closed the folder. "Well, if you change your mind, let me know, and if he does try to cause trouble for you, call me. I have enough ammunition to stop him in his tracks." We finished lunch and went our separate ways. As I drove back to the office, I thought about what Patricia had told me. The idea that Lauren had been just another conquest in a long line of them was somehow both comforting and infuriating. Comforting because it meant our marriage hadn't failed due to some fundamental flaw in our relationship. Infuriating because it meant she'd thrown away 8 years for a man who saw her as nothing more than a temporary diversion. My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number again, but I was pretty sure I knew who it was. "I saw you having lunch with Patricia. We need to talk." I deleted the message without responding. Whatever Lauren wanted to say, I wasn't interested in hearing it. But as I pulled into the office parking lot, I saw a familiar figure waiting by my car. Lauren, looking even more desperate than she had at the coffee shop. "Eli," she called out as I approached. "I've been waiting for you. I told you we had nothing to talk about." "That was before I knew you were meeting with her. Do you have any idea what she's planning?" "What are you talking about?" "Patricia Holbrook. She's not the innocent victim she's pretending to be. She's dangerous, Eli, and she's using you." I looked at Lauren, really looked at her. She was thinner than before, and there were dark circles under her eyes. Her clothes were wrinkled, and her hair needed washing. "How would you know anything about Patricia's plans?" I asked. "Because Greg told me. He's been trying to warn people about her." "Greg's been talking to you?" Lauren's face flushed. "He called me yesterday. He's scared, Eli. Patricia has been threatening him." "Good. He should be scared." "You don't understand. She's not just going after Greg. She's going after everyone connected to him, including you." I stared at her. "What are you talking about?" "She blames you for exposing the affair before she was ready. She had some kind of plan, and you messed it up by acting too quickly." "That's ridiculous." "Is it? Think about it, Eli. She had been documenting Greg's affairs for 3 years. 3 years. She could have divorced him at any time, but she waited." "Why?" I didn't have an answer for that. "She was planning something bigger," Lauren continued, "and when you sent that photo, you forced her hand. Now she's improvising, and that makes her dangerous." Even if that's true, it's not my problem. It is your problem if she decides you're a threat to whatever she's really after. I looked at Lauren standing there in the parking lot, desperate and disheveled, trying to convince me that the woman who'd thanked me for exposing her husband's affair was somehow the real villain in this story. Lauren, I said quietly, I want you to listen to me very carefully. I don't care about Patricia's plans. I don't care about Greg's fears. And I don't care about whatever story you're trying to tell me to get back into my good graces. This isn't about us. This is exactly about us. You're trying to create some kind of conspiracy theory to explain away what you did. But the truth is simple. You had an affair with my boss, I caught you, and now you're dealing with the consequences. Eli, go home, Lauren, or go to your motel or wherever you're staying, but stop trying to drag me into whatever drama is happening between you and Greg and Patricia. I walked toward the office building, leaving her standing by my car. As I reached the door, she called out one more time. He's not done with you, Eli. Greg isn't the type to just accept defeat, and neither is she. I didn't turn around, but her words followed me into the building. Despite everything, despite my determination to move on and forget about all of them, I couldn't shake the feeling that Lauren might be right about one thing. This wasn't over yet. 3 days after my conversation with Lauren in the parking lot, I got a call that changed everything. It was from Detective Ray Morrison, a guy I'd gone to high school with who now worked for the state police. Eli, he said, I need to ask you some questions about Gregory Holbrook. What kind of questions? The kind that are better asked in person. Can you come down to the station? An hour later, I was sitting in a small interview room, wondering what the hell Greg had done now. We've received some serious allegations about Mr. Holbrook, Detective Morrison said, settling into the chair across from me. Financial crimes, mostly. Embezzlement, tax evasion, some other things. Okay, I said carefully. What does that have to do with me? The allegations came from his wife, Patricia Holbrook. She's provided us with extensive documentation of what she claims are illegal activities going back several years. I thought about my lunch with Patricia and the folder full of evidence she'd shown me. She mentioned some business irregularities when we talked. You've been talking to her? She called me after the divorce proceedings started. We had lunch once. She wanted to thank me for exposing Greg's affairs. Detective Morrison made a note. What else did you discuss? She showed me evidence of Greg's other affairs, photos, credit card statements, that kind of thing. She said she'd been building a case for years. Did she mention anything about his business activities? I hesitated. She said there were some tax issues and regulatory violations, but she didn't go into detail. Did she ask you to help her with anything? She offered to help me if Greg tried to retaliate for the affair being exposed, but I told her I wasn't interested. Detective Morrison nodded and made another note. What about your wife, Lauren? Have you spoken to her recently? A few days ago, she came to my office, tried to warn me that Patricia was dangerous, said Greg had called her. What kind of warning? She claimed Patricia was planning something and that I had messed it up by exposing the affair too early. She said Patricia might come after me. Do you believe that? I thought about it. I don't know. Lauren's been pretty desperate since everything fell apart. She might be making things up to get my attention. Or she might be telling the truth. What do you mean? Detective Morrison leaned back in his chair. We've been looking into Mrs. Holbrook's allegations, and something doesn't add up. The evidence she's provided is very detailed, very thorough, almost too thorough. I don't understand. Most of the documents she's given us would have been very difficult for a spouse to obtain legally. Bank records, business correspondence, internal company memos. It's like she had inside access to information she shouldn't have been able to get. Maybe she hired a good private investigator. Maybe. Or maybe she had help from someone with legitimate access to that information. I felt a chill run down my spine. You think Greg was working with her? It's possible. Think about it. What if the affairs weren't secret at all? What if Patricia knew about them and was using them as cover for something else? Cover for what? For systematically looting her husband's business accounts. For setting up a scenario where she could claim he was the criminal while she walked away with everything. I stared at him. That's pretty elaborate. White-collar crime usually is, and Mrs. Holbrook is a very smart woman with access to some very sophisticated financial advisors. But why would Greg go along with it? Why would he risk his reputation and his career? Maybe he didn't have a choice. Maybe she had something on him that was worse than public humiliation. Detective Morrison opened a file and pulled out several photographs. We found these in Gregory Holbrook's safe deposit box. The photos showed Greg with what looked like underage girls. My stomach turned. Jesus, I whispered. Mrs. Holbrook claims she knew nothing about these. Says she was as shocked as anyone when we found them. You don't believe her? Detective Morrison leaned forward in the interrogation room. Mrs. Holbrook's been playing a long game. Your early return home wasn't in her script? That photo you sent her? It forced her to speed everything up. I stared at the table. And Greg's suicide? Convenient timing. He was facing decades in prison. Patricia handed us the evidence that buried him. Then he conveniently dies before trial. My phone rang as I left the station. Patricia's name on the screen. Eli, I'm devastated about Gregory, she said, voice smooth as silk. The shame must have been too much. The police mentioned financial crimes and that you've been helpful. Of course, I couldn't let him continue hurting people. She invited me over that evening. There are things you need to know about Lauren's involvement. Every instinct screamed no. I went anyway. Her house was cold and pristine. She poured wine, sat calmly, and slid an envelope across the table. Lauren wasn't just sleeping with Greg. She helped him launder money, forge documents. They used your identity, your SSN, your accounts to hide assets. Hundreds of thousands. The documents looked real. Transactions in my name, accounts I never opened. This is fake, I said, voice shaking. Is it? Or did your wife frame you as the fall guy? She smiled. Help me make sure the real criminals pay. Testify against Lauren. Or these go to the feds, with my statement that you were in on it. Blackmail. Pure and simple. I left, head spinning. Patricia Holbrook wasn't grieving. She was cleaning house. In my driveway, Lauren waited on the steps, pale and terrified. Eli, she's framing us both. She's been planning this for months. For the first time since catching her with Greg, I believed her. Come inside, I said. Tell me everything.